The restaurant buzzed softly with the low hum of conversation and clinking glasses, the golden glow of chandeliers spilling across linen-covered tables. For most guests, it was just another evening of fine dining, but for Daniel Carter it was survival. The single father of a 7-year-old girl, he wasn't serving expensive wine and wagyu steaks for fun. He was fighting to keep a roof over their heads, scraping together every shift, every tip, every exhausted breath between sunrise and midnight. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his boti in the reflection of the wine cabinet. It wasn't nervousness exactly. It was exhaustion. He had worked 12 hours straight after dropping his daughter, Emily, at his neighbor's house. She had begged him to come home early tonight so she could show him her drawing of Daddy the Hero. But rent was due in 3 days, and there were hospital bills from his late wife that still whispered his failures from the drawer he couldn't bear to open. As Daniel picked up a bottle of Che 2 Margox, his manager whispered sharply, "Table 9, don't mess this one up." That's Olivia Harrington. The name hit him like a jolt. Everyone in the city knew who she was, the billionaire CEO of Harrington Holdings, one of the most powerful women in the corporate world. Ruthless, brilliant, and intimidatingly composed, her company practically ran half the real estate developments in the city. Rumor was she could make or break anyone with a single word. Neil took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and walked toward her table. If you're new here, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Universe. Your support helps us keep sharing inspiring stories that remind us of the power of empathy and second chances. Olivia sat alone, her posture perfect, her eyes sharp yet distant as she glanced at her tablet between sips of water. She wore elegance like armor, a deep emerald dress, diamonds subtle but unmistakable, and that calm expression that told the world she was untouchable. Daniel approached with quiet care, rehearsing in his mind how not to make a fool of himself. "Good evening, ma'am. Would you like to sample the wine first?" he asked softly, his voice gentle and respectful. She nodded without looking up. "Please," he poured carefully, his hand steady, until a waiter bumped into him from behind. In one horrible instant, a stream of deep red wine cascaded down Olivia Harrington's emerald dress. The color spread like fire across silk. A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. The clinking of forks stopped. Conversations froze. Daniel's heart plummeted. "Oh God, I'm so sorry, ma'am," he stammered, grabbing napkins in panic. It was an accident. Please, I'll..." But Olivia had already risen to her feet, silent. The entire room watched, waiting for the explosion. Daniel's manager was pale, his eyes wide with dread. Daniel's throat tightened. He couldn't lose this job, not now. Emily needed him. Olivia looked at him for a long, piercing moment. Then she said something that silenced the entire room. "It's just a dress," she said quietly. "Are you all right?" The room went still. Even Daniel froze, unsure he'd heard correctly. Olivia's tone softened as she saw his trembling hands. "You're shaking. Take a breath." I can pay for the cleaning, ma'am," he stuttered. "Please don't tell my manager. I can't lose this job." She raised a hand gently. "Calm down. Accidents happen. What's your name? Daniel? Daniel Carter?" She nodded. "Well, Daniel Carter, I think you just saved me from sitting through another 2-hour meeting that I didn't want to attend. You've done me a favor." A faint smile touched her lips, brief but real. And just like that, she left, slipping her card onto the table. On it, she'd written only 3 words, "Come see me." Daniel didn't sleep that night. He replayed the moment again and again, confused, hopeful, terrified. Why would a billionaire CEO want to see a waiter? The next morning, after dropping Emily off at school, he stared at the address on the card. The Harrington Tower, downtown. He almost turned back twice, but something in him whispered to try. He arrived at the gleaming skyscraper feeling wildly out of place. Security looked him up and down, but when he showed the card, they simply nodded and led him to the top floor. Olivia stood by the massive window of her office, the skyline behind her like a painting. She turned when he entered, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Carter," she said, "I did some research on you last night." Daniel blinked. "Research?" She smiled faintly. "You used to study mechanical engineering. Top of your class. Dropped out after your wife passed away. I also saw your daughter's hospital records. You've been through a lot." His stomach tightened. "How? Why would you?" "Because I see talent wasting away behind a waiter's apron." Olivia interrupted softly. and I don't like seeing good people worried by bad luck." Daniel stared at her, lost for words. "Ma'am, I appreciate that, but I'm not asking for pity." "This isn't pity," she said sharply. "This is opportunity." She slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a proposal for a project. A small housing initiative designed for single parents struggling to make ends meet. His name was listed under project consultant. "I need someone who understands struggle firsthand," Olivia said. "Someone with empathy, not just spreadsheets. I want you on my team." He was speechless. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," she said simply. "And show up tomorrow." The next months changed Daniel's life. He learned fast, worked harder than ever, and poured his heart into the project. Olivia was demanding but fair, a mentor who saw potential in him no one else had. Their relationship evolved from employer and employee to something more human. Late nights in the office turned into deep conversations about loss, purpose, and redemption. Olivia confessed that her success had cost her everything: her marriage, her friendships, even her peace. One evening, as they stood watching the sunset from her office, she said quietly, "You know, Daniel, I used to think strength meant never showing weakness. But then I saw you work every day, smiling for customers even when your heart was breaking. That's strength." Daniel looked at her, humbled. "And I used to think people like you didn't feel pain." She smiled sadly. "We all do. We just learned to hide it better." Months later, their housing project launched successfully, providing affordable homes for hundreds of struggling single parents. News outlets praised the heart-driven vision behind the initiative. But Olivia gave Daniel full credit during the press conference. When reporters asked why she trusted a former waiter with such responsibility, she replied, "Because kindness and resilience can't be taught in boardrooms. Sometimes, the best leaders are the ones who've suffered the most, and still choose to care." That quote went viral overnight. Before we wrap up, if this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Universe. Your support helps us spread real stories of hope, second chances, and the power of compassion. A year later, Daniel stood in front of a small crowd at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new community center named Emily's Haven. Olivia had named it after his daughter, who now ran laughing across the courtyard, carefree for the first time in years. He looked over to Olivia, who smiled warmly from the sidelines. "You did this," she mouthed. But Daniel shook his head. "We did." As the sun dipped low behind the skyline, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Daniel finally understood. Sometimes life spills the wine for a reason. Because from the mess, something beautiful can begin again. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter, sunlight, and second chances, he whispered to himself, maybe she was right. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up every single time.